Today we're speaking with Christina of Rainbow Hearts Healing Arts. She's an intuitive healer with more than 10 years of experience as a certified reflexologist, essential oil educator, and aroma touch technique practitioner. What does all that mean? You're going to hear that in my interview with Christina. It is all about natural healing today. This is Hey Hearts 143 with Natalie Tavidian. 143 means I love you. Together, we're learning to love ourselves and stay in love no matter what life throws at us. We are constantly evolving, changing, growing emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And we have to remember to check in with our own heart as we're propelled forward. When you love your own heart, you heal better, you do better, and you live a more fulfilled life. Hi, Christina.
Hi,
Thank you
Natalie.
so much for being here. So Christina and I met at the Awareness Center, and I talked about that in my first episode. I'm still just dabbling into healer training, but this is your second time around.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, I want to talk a little bit about being that healer. Do you feel like you've always been drawn to it? Because when I first came in, we were all like, it takes a very special person to be drawn to do this class.
The healer training program?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I first stepped foot into the Awareness Center in August of 2011. Mm-hmm. And the idea of doing teacher training or healer training was like the last thing on my mind. But as soon as I started doing Kundalini yoga, like after the first class, I knew I was hooked. Mm-hmm. And they used to have some t-shirts in the lobby that said, I found my center, the Awareness Center. And I was like, yes, I found my center. Because I had dabbled in other styles of yoga for many years, mostly Hatha. But the Kundalini style just suited me because of the multifaceted approach with mantra, with pranayama, with breath work, with postures, and then the meditation. Just the really heavy emphasis on the spirituality and the meditation was really what my soul wanted. So after doing teacher training in 2012, I heard about healer training, and I immediately started thinking, oh, I'm going to do that at some point.
You just knew.
I just knew because reading the brochure, seeing the description of it, and after meeting Waheguru and understanding what that was about, I knew that was something I wanted to do. It was just a matter of when. Mm-hmm. So I think I went straight into a level 2 Kundalini training right after level 1. So that kind of took me into the next year. So then the following year, 2014, is when I did healer training.
And
just loved it.
So last week I had a meditation expert come in here, and we were talking a lot about meditating, and I told a lot of the people in the class that Hey Heart 143 came to me during meditating, and you're just saying your Instagram handle, right. Rainbow Hearts Healing Arts. Mm-hmm. That just came to you while you were meditating. Talk about that. What exactly is that?
So it happened about 10 years ago, and my daughter was a baby. I had my kids back to back, mm-hmm. and spent basically feeling like 2 years pregnant, where my body was like no longer my own. I was nursing and spent a couple of years feeling like I was just in this full on, of course, giving from like every part of my body. And so when my daughter was about a year, I started going back to yoga. I started
literally giving, physically.
Literally giving birth, giving milk, giving everything. My sleep, every part of my body was like, had a child attached to it at some part of the day for a couple years. And so I felt really disconnected from my
yourself.
body. Yeah, and from myself. And so I went back to doing yoga once a week. And it was just a traditional Hatha class, postures, some breath work, and a very, very short Shavasana at the end, which is when you just lay out and sort of integrate all the work. And it was during that very meditative state that I had this very loud, clear message of Rainbow Hearts Healing Arts. And I had no idea what it meant at the time. I just thought, oh, maybe at some point this will be my business. And I should say, around that time, I had started studying reflexology and became certified. And so I thought, oh, well, maybe at some point this will be the name of my reflexology business because it's healing arts. And I happen to love visual arts and paints. And I have a very strong creative streak in me. I didn't know how it was all going to come together. And at the time, my kids were really young and I didn't have a lot of time to devote to.
Doesn't matter. It just felt right.
Felt right. So it's taken all of these years to really unfold in the way that finally this year I feel like I know what it's all about. I know what all the pieces mean. I had these visions, and there have been times over the years where it becomes more and more clear. Mm-hmm. So what it means to me is, number one, I've always loved rainbows. As a child, as a young girl, I would draw hearts, I would paint rainbows. And then I went through my, young adult phase where it's like, oh, well, that's childish. Ignore those things.
And you hold back.
You hold back, right? Because it seems silly or whatever.
I've been saying that a lot lately. Like, I just want to be more playful, and I can't seem to just, like, open up and be more playful.
Well, and I always had heart jewelry. My favorite jewelry is a heart pendant, heart earrings. The heart symbol is one that I've just always resonated with. Beyond childhood, just through adulthood, I always had a heart necklace or something. So hearts to me are very special. Mm-hmm. The rainbow element, I've always loved color. I love paints. I love things that are colorful. And then learning about the chakra system in yoga, it's in rainbow order. Okay. As I went through teacher training, as I learned more and more and more, I've always been drawn to the chakras. I have so many books on just the chakras.
And we're going to have to talk about that at some point.
So to me, what it means now is the work that I do now when I do healing sessions with people, it's not just reflexology. It's a synthesis of so many different modalities, but it always comes back to, number one, working through the heart center and working through the chakras and so each chakra to me is a color. Color is very important. That's how I intuit feelings. That's how I explain things to clients. Mm-hmm. Color is a very universal language. It's the language of light. The more we understand how the cosmos works and energy, it's always about light. In a metaphysical and spiritual sense, we're always talking about from darkness to light. That's what guru means, from darkness to light. So
is that what it means? Mm-hmm. I always wondered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all of yoga's aim is to take you from darkness to light. Your guru is just the teacher.
I could picture that right now. Mm-hmm. Sort of like a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And what is a rainbow? But it's refracted light. It's the small, tiny, visible part of the light spectrum. And when we see a rainbow, everybody says, it's...
Wow, look. You have to look. You take photos of it. It never does it justice.
It always feels magical. It always feels special. It always feels like...
You think of a loved one, or it takes you back somewhere.
It feels like good luck. It feels like magic.
Yeah.
And those key words, magic, luck, joy, happiness, miracles, those are some really core values that I hold dear. And in these last few years, it's become more and more part of my day-to-day practices, how I interact with people, and we could get into a lot of other things right now in terms of...
I feel like we don't use those words enough.
Yeah, and it's something that I've really come to embrace, and I don't shy away from using those words now because I truly believe in magic and miracles, which we can start talking about.
Yeah,
yeah. So I got divorced 3 years ago. And when I got divorced, I knew I wanted to change my name, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So Crabtree is my maiden name. I had the option, of course, of going back to... I'm sorry, Crabtree is my married name.
Your married name. Yeah.
Maiden name, Diaz, I didn't have a problem with, but I felt that was my younger self.
Yeah.
And
so then you had a new identity.
Yeah, I really felt like in the couple of years of leading up to the divorce and then processing it.
So it's been 3 years now.
It's been 3 years, give or take. Yeah.
Okay.
But doing
Do you
a
feel
lot
like
of
you've healed
searching.
from it?
Yes. Yeah. I did going through teacher training actually and healer training was part of my healing work preemptively, in a sense. I did a lot of work around the relationship to the point when
that makes my heart smile, because I came into it right after my big breakup.
Yeah. Such a powerful practice.
I remember telling you on day one and like immediately felt a connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And my close friends that did teacher training and healer training with me knew, like, every step of the way I was still trying to make my marriage work and trying to fix parts of my relationship, fix myself, there was so much I was trying to fix. And it was actually during a healing breath meditation in healer training that I got a big message. Like, you've done
an intuitive message.
A very strong intuitive message. You've done enough. You can stop now. Because up to that point, I was still doing are you familiar with the So-Perk meditation?
No, what is that?
Okay, so in the Kundalini tradition, there's a meditation called So-Perk.
Okay.
And it's the meditation for women, specifically for women to chant. It's a mantra to attract a spiritual man or to help elevate a man in your life, your partner, your father, your son, your whoever it is. So it's specifically a practice for women to do to elevate men. And I had first been exposed to that at the Awareness Center. There used to be a monthly So-Perk Women's Circle, and I really liked that.
If you can hear me typing, this is interesting.
So I had been doing it for, I think, over 90 days at that point, and just kept going with it because I just really felt strongly that
This is before the divorce.
Right.
This is while
correct.
you were still fighting and trying to save it with
yeah.
every last.
Yeah. So it was during that.
But doesn't that bring a lot of peace, because you did everything
Absolutely.
a wife should do?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And beyond just for my husband at the time, it was also for my son.
Yeah.
My son has some special needs, and that was a big source of stress and challenge in our marriage. And we didn't always see eye to eye in parenting. And so when you feel like on a physical level you can't fix something, the beautiful thing about the practices in Kundalini are that you can work energetically. And what I ultimately learned, though, is that the only person I can fix is myself. And I can change how I feel about the situation. So when I say that I did all my healing work preemptively, it was true. By the time I got to the point where the divorce papers were stamped, I felt complete.
It didn't start right after that. It was
I had been doing years of emotional work. And I think to outside people who don't know everything I did, maybe...
Did they see you very happy?
They saw me very happy immediately afterwards and started making their own stories about why I could be so happy or judgments and whatnot.
This is something I've been thinking about so much lately is, people, and like I'm always a very quote unquote happy person, and people think, oh, her life is easy. There's nothing she's going through, but happiness is work. Like,
oh yeah,
keeping that joy is work, and everything you did leading up to signing those divorce papers, like that is work, and I think that work is something that people don't see.
No, because getting divorced is not an easy decision for anybody. I mean, I didn't get married thinking I would ever get divorced. And I stayed in it for a lot longer than I probably should have because of things like money, things like fear, things like I'm doing it for the sake of the kids. Nobody else in my family ever got divorced. My parents are still married. His parents are still married. There's all the social stigmas. There's just so much around it. So it was not a decision that I ever came to lightly. And I didn't know how it was all going to
And then there's also the ego.
Yeah. But once I got to the point where I made that decision, and it was a mutual decision initially. Yeah. It's not like it's ever easy.
It doesn't matter how the decision's made. It's always difficult.
But in terms of my feelings emotionally and feeling, I just trusted and knew in my heart that it was the right step. And I trusted that it would all unfold, that I would be okay, and that it was for the highest good of everyone. I really did feel that. And it's because of the spiritual practices that I had and the community that I've had around me and the truly like amazing soul friends that I've developed through these practices that I was able to get through it and be joyful and be happy. And I understood and still do maintain that my happiness will help my kids.
Yeah.
It does not serve them to see me
broken
and unhappy or guilting or whatever.
So are you struggling with the name change now?
Now it's just a matter of logistics and paperwork.
So it has nothing to do with the
It
identity?
has nothing to do with, no, I know who I am.
Yeah.
Now it's more of just like, changing all the documents. By a certain point in your life, you have a lot of official things attached with your name. Yeah. Passport, license, house stuff. It's more of that, practical matters. But what I find interesting is that a name, whether it's a pen name or a business name or a personal name, can have such a huge energetic power over everything.
It does. It says a lot about a person or how someone views you. Sat Nam.
Yeah, Sat Nam. Truth. So, do you want to explain what that is?
You explain.
All right. So, in the Kundalini practice, we say Sat Nam, which is Sat means truth and Nam means name or identity. And it's used as a greeting. It's probably the most well-used mantra. It's a mantra. It's a word or sound that carries vibration. That's what mantra is. And so when we say Sat Nam, we're acknowledging our true identity. I'm acknowledging your true identity. I'm acknowledging my true identity. And we use it as a greeting, much like in other yogic practices, they say namaste, which is the light in me recognizes the light in you. We're saying we're each divine.
I feel like when we are
true.
Meditating, we're getting to that, right? That identity.
Yeah.
Peeling the layers, taking that mask off, and just being authentic, being real.
Thank you. Yeah. So when I was speaking of like these power words that are like part of my core philosophy,
magic,
authentic is another one. And that's something that's really, really important to me, is to be authentic and to have authentic relationships and to have authentic communication. So that's why a name is important, because it is expressing something about me. And I want that to be an authentic representation.
Talk about your reflexology and your first podcast experience.
Okay. Well, so I became a certified reflexologist 10 years ago. And I fell in love with the practice because I felt like I had found my tribe. Healing body workers were amazing, fun, creative, loving, heart-centered people. And after having been in the corporate world for the previous 10 years, it was a totally different paradigm. So what I loved about reflexology is that I loved using my hands.
Because there are so many different styles of healing, and you can have so many different practices of healing.
And one of the magical things about reflexology is that it comes from the idea that there's a map of the entire body on the surface of the hands and the feet and the outer ears. I do hand, foot, and ear reflexology.
I didn't know about the ear.
Yeah, the ears are amazing, really amazing. So there's even more out there. There's facial reflexology. But feet are probably the most well-known. You see these foot charts all over the internet. Yeah. Most people have seen those. And if you think about a keyboard, when you press a button on that keyboard, what's happening?
I'm typing.
You're pressing a button on the surface of this machine, which is making something happen on the inside.
Yes.
That you don't see.
That's a really good way to explain it.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I tell people that I'm pressing a point on your hand, but it has a corresponding point to your stomach, that's how it works. I mean, I think modern science has shown that our human bodies are more intricate and miraculous than any man-made machine.
Yeah.
So it's pretty naive of us to think that our bodies wouldn't have corresponding points. We know that the nervous system is the primary system through which reflexology works. There's tens of thousands of nerve endings on the hands and the feet. Mm-hmm. So when you're pressing, you're helping. What reflexology does is I'm helping to reduce blockages in the nerve endings. There's calcification that forms on the tips and the ends of these nerve endings.
I've just known like little natural cures growing up where if my dad has a headache, he'd be like, just squeeze right here really, really strong and right between the thumb and the index finger, right?
Exactly. So that's a really well-known, probably the most well-known point.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's heard of something like that.
Yeah.
So in traditional Chinese medicine, they work through the meridian system. So you've seen those charts.
Yeah.
And there's some crossover with some of the points we use in reflexology are those meridian ending points. Mm-hmm. But reflexology is its own modality, its own path.
Okay.
And it was first codified as its own healing modality in the early 1900s by two Western medical doctors. And they first developed the idea of zones and points, and that's how it evolved.
I feel like they should be using this in hospitals and doctors' offices more.
So in Europe and in other parts of the world, like in China, they do. They actually do. There was a French doctor, Noget, who was the one who first started working with the ears. And then what happened is the Chinese got really interested in it, and they spent a lot of money on research to map out all these points in the ears. And they've mapped several hundred points.
Too.
Right. So with needles or with little, there's the little ear seeds. You might see little stickers on people's ears. They're actually applying pressure to those points. But what I do is purely with touch.
Okay.
And it's a very gentle form of touch therapy because it doesn't take a lot of pressure to actually work to
sort of activate what's there.
Mm-hmm. So because it's a gentle touch therapy or modality, it's safe for everyone. I've worked on newborns. I've worked on pregnant women. I've worked on elderly people in the hospital on hospice.
Wow.
Anything and everything in between. So for anyone who maybe acupuncture isn't something that they want because needles may be something that not everybody's interested in, reflexology is a great alternative.
Okay.
Same thing with massage. Some people are uncomfortable disrobing. Some people just don't want...
I know people who hate massages.
Right.
Like, just can't stand being touched. I love
Yeah.
them.
So, like my mom, for example, has severe fibromyalgia and a lot of pain, and having a full body massage is sometimes too much for her.
Yeah.
But reflexology is gentle enough that it can work.
And you've seen it help her. So the podcast.
Yes, sorry, that was a long sidetrack. So that's my background. I was contacted.
Who brought you on to talk about?
So 2 years ago, it was 2 years ago now. I got contacted by a woman via email who found me on LinkedIn, wanting to know if I would come on their podcast. She and her good friend have a podcast all about like sexual empowerment for young women and just sort of young people in general. And they had an episode where somebody was talking about having a foot fetish. So in that conversation, they thought we should talk to a foot reflexologist and find out if there is something about like, stimulating the sexual interest in the feet. So they wanted me to come on and sort of give my expert opinion about sexuality through the feet. So this is
not why I got
question?
into reflexology.
Yeah, no, I was trained by a very, very how do I put it? Like, we view reflexology very professionally, and there's strict protocols. It is a profession. I am a professional, and there's very strict codes of ethics, as with any body workers. Yeah. Like, it's not meant to be sexually stimulating whatsoever. Now, in the privacy of one's own home, if you pick up a book on reflexology and you're giving your partner, it's like massage. Like, massage can be viewed totally therapeutically, or it can be viewed as something more intimate, depending. It all comes back to intention. Yeah. What intention are you bringing to it? When I'm working with a client, it's extremely professional. I'm only working through, like, they don't take off their clothes. They take off their socks. I'm working on bare feet, and I'm working on hands.
That's just really funny that they reached out to a reflexologist to talk about this.
So it was a fun experience. And as far as, like, foot fetishes go, it made me laugh because it reminded me actually of when I was in college. I went to UCLA. There was a helpline, which was a crisis hotline, that I was a trained volunteer, and I would served on this hotline. And it was open every night from 7 to midnight, 8 to midnight.
What kind of hotline?
So it was a crisis hotline. So UCLA is a ginormous campus, and as we know, college can be really stressful for people, and it was just a call.
That seems like a stressful job.
Well, it was at times, and we went through rigorous training to do it, and we always had a backup person with us, and we had other trained people, and our role was to be a provider of empathic listening and to give referrals. We were not therapists, so we weren't giving advice. We weren't giving any medical advice or treatment or anything like that. It was just purely to be a listener. So whether somebody was stressed about finals or a bad breakup or something worse, we knew how to give them the help that they needed, whether it was just to listen for the night or to give them a referral to something more, like an actual therapy hotline or suicide prevention hotlines and whatnot. It was a referral source. But we had lots of people who would call because they wanted to just hear a woman's voice on the line.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
these were students?
Not necessarily, because this was a phone number that was publicized all around. Anybody could call. There was no way we could prevent somebody from the outside, a random person or somebody looking to use your imagination, hear somebody's voice and do something interesting with it. So we kept a bulletin board where we had kind of keywords that certain people would use. So we had some people that we called repeaters, where they would call repeatedly.
Okay.
And we got to the point where we could identify them based on certain key phrases that they would say. And there was one person who always mentioned feet when he called.
Oh my goodness.
So he clearly had a foot fetish. And the minute his story started rambling on and on about somebody's feet, we knew that this person was not a legitimate person in crisis. This was somebody who was looking for something else.
Killing time and wanting to
So we would end the call because, of course, we were college students ourselves, and this is not what this phone-in line was about. Yeah. So we would hang up and end the call.
But that's funny that you've picked up that call.
Yeah. So all of us who worked in the line at some point had dealt with situations like that.
Now, I know you've also studied, and I want you to come back someday and talk about the whole chakra system and spirituality and so much more, but I know you also mix in essential oils with reflexology.
Yes.
And you've studied all of that and the healing powers of that.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. So essential oils came into my world about 4 years ago, and I was introduced to them. I bought a kit. doTERRA is the company that I work with. I started using the oils on my kids and myself at home. My son has a lot of anxiety. He has ADHD. He was very sensitive as an infant. I learned quickly that I couldn't buy anything scented for him. None of the baby lotions, with even the lavender baby scented things, were just did not work with him. He would cry. He would get sensitive skin. So everything with the kids was unscented for a long time until I introduced these oils. My son loved them. Both kids took to them. They were used to me rubbing their feet every night at bedtime with doing reflexology. Aww. So I started incorporating lavender. And it was totally okay for the kids. Totally okay. Yeah. And I started using frankincense in my nightly meditation. I've always been very sensitive to smells. I don't like artificially scented things. I stopped using commercial perfumes.
I was introduced to essential oils at a bachelorette party, and I thought it was the smartest thing in the world because so many people woke up with headaches, and this one girl was like, here, I don't remember what you probably know what works for headaches, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then I started looking into it. So
Yeah.
I don't know much about it, but
I will definitely give you a special one-on-one talk about that, or we can come back and talk just oils. Yeah, it's something that it was so powerful using them with the kids.
And you add that into your reflexology practice.
Right. So traditionally, reflexology is done without lotions, without oils. It's just touch, and it works amazing. You don't need anything else. But aromatherapy, as we all know, has been around for a long time. The olfactory gland, our sense of smell, is super linked with our emotional state, the limbic system, part of our brain. So incorporating smell into any healing modality just enhances the work. So after about a year of using the oils on my kids and myself, I gradually started using them with clients and, of course, checking in with them, and they were okay, and everybody loved them, and started using them in my yoga practice and then teaching classes with oils. And I had gotten to the point after about a year that I fell in love with the oils so much, bought a second kit, and realized that there was a business opportunity there. And it was totally in alignment with what I was already doing, which was yoga, reflexology, and teaching, that I just started teaching classes about essential oils. I learned as much as I could, learning constantly. I still learn every day. There's so much to know. But the beauty of them, too, is that you don't even have to understand it. People just have an experience.
Well, when we went, I have asthma. I had childhood asthma. And when we went
Me too.
hiking, you brought some with you, and I didn't need an inhaler. I mean, I don't use it too often, but it's just my lungs felt so great on that hike.
Wonderful. I had forgotten about that.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. It's
course,
funny. That's the Breathe blend, and I popped that one in my bag today because I had just read something else about it yesterday. I'm like, you know what? I grew up also with childhood asthma, using inhalers. My kids have had bouts here and there. One of the reasons that I actually got into reflexology is because when the kids were young, those first 2 years, you can't give them over-the-counter cold medicine, cough medicine. They're
Just keep it as natural as possible.
And I was already aware that my son was very sensitive, so I was very interested in natural and holistic alternative approaches to healthcare with them. So the reflexology then dovetailed into learning more about lots of other things. So the oils just became like the next logical step. And yeah, I mean, they are now my first line of defense before anything else. So the kids get a cold or cough. My daughter would have wheezing episodes. I will just use the oils.
Start with what's natural, and then see if you need to.
Yeah, because the other beautiful thing is that there's no side effects.
Yeah.
Anything over the counter and, of course, prescription will have a side effect.
Yeah.
And that's one of the scary things about asthma inhalers. I was pregnant during both pregnancies. It put pressure on my lungs. And I started having some wheezing. And
you didn't want to use medication.
I didn't want to, but at that point, the doctor said, it's more important that you as mom are getting air and oxygen into your lungs. So they do this whole thing where it's like, well, it's better that you take this medication. And I did, but it was always with like this feeling of like, kind of nervous that I'm introducing, medication while I'm pregnant. I didn't have the oils at the time. Now I'm such a proponent of the oils that, again, I use them before anything else. I have oils in my water. I drink oils every day. I use oils in my diffuser at home. I just took a peppermint beadlet before we started talking.
Well, I'm going to ask you to, I'll have it on the website if you can write a little bit of some tidbits on, what's some of the popular ones that people could use,
Absolutely.
For headaches, for hiking, for breathing, for relaxing, and we'll have that on the website.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just at the Awareness Center today. I mentioned to you earlier when we were talking about the summer kids camp that's going on this week. And I did a special little project with the kids where they got to make essential oil spray bottles for themselves to enhance their superpowers, because that's the theme for the week. So they got to smell a few oils and combine two that they liked and create their own special blend and name it. So they made their own little magical potion spray.
Whatever they were drawn to.
And I explained to them a little bit about the benefits of citrus oils versus like the mints or some of the other oils. So it was great. I got to experience that, yeah.
Keep it natural. Teach us how to make some natural bug spray too for the summer, for camping.
I have that.
Yeah?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because when I started to work with doTERRA as the business, I was making essential oil bug sprays and selling them to people around town, because
those are so harsh.
My daughter and I had been like eaten up that year. There were a lot of mosquitoes, and again, I prefer the natural to the synthetic, and that was it. I started blending little bug repellents.
I hope you're okay with that. Giving us some tips to put that on social media and our website.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Instagram,
rainbowhearts_healing arts. I'm on Yelp and Facebook as Christina Crabtree, and LinkedIn. And I'll be working on a new website soon. Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on, Christina. And log on to heyheart143.com, and I'll have all the information and some tips from Christina on the show notes on this episode. If you feel drawn to, please go over to iTunes, rate this episode so more people can find it. Thank you